With the roster window closed, we're left with a little bit of an unfamiliar landscape, but we got someone caught in that hurricane. It's the legend Kronovi joining me to talk about all the madness. Kronovi, thanks for joining, man.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's honestly been a while since we actually got to sit down and chat. So I'm excited to really see what's going on in your mind, what it's like going through all this craziness over the past like 4 or 5 years here, and what it looks like going forward for you. Let's look back a bit. Let's talk about just what your journey's been like so far. Obviously, you started before Rocket League was a thing, with Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Pirate Battle Cars, won Season 1, and then you've always been in kind of the spotlight, that top talks for the whole time. What's it like just maintaining yourself in a top player kind of position and being so good for so long?
Well, it's not easy. It started off really good, but there's been, high highs and low lows at times. Competition has always been fierce, especially just recently, with even more people signing up for every single RLCS, and there's so many teams biting at your heels all the time if you're at the top. So you really need to just stay consistent, focus on yourself, and you really have to evolve over time. I don't think I would still be able to play every season if it wasn't for, realizing, hey, this thing people are doing right now might be really popular later, and I should get ahead and start practicing it now.
I'm kind of curious because there obviously I feel like there was a bit of a slump, where a bunch of the original SARP vets did eventually fall off. I feel like just at the front of my mind here, I remember you and Cux, kind of being the ones that are still going strong, but a bunch fell off here. You had a bit of a slump, it felt like, but you brought it back huge, and all of a sudden you looking like a new player in the past couple of seasons here. I think part of it was a button rebinding that maybe changed it. I think it was your drift, your air roll or something to L1. What was like that slump like, and how did you continue to motivate yourself to get back to the top, like make sure you're still at the top?
I definitely noticed that I was falling behind in some areas, and it was just frustrating for me that I knew what I should be doing, and I just it was a mechanics thing. I knew what I wanted to do, and I couldn't do it. And I was like trying to, where do I put this blame? Where do I
your teammates
have this gap? And obviously, at the time I had incredible teammates, and so I knew it that there was nowhere to turn. It was I had to look inward, And so I moved off of default controls I moved my air roll to like L1. And that took me a while to get adjusted to, but I started to see noticeable improvement mechanically like the following season. And then I got kind of used to it. And then I fell into a little bit of another slump because now that I had more mechanics, I wasn't used to having that many mechanics. And so I started using them wrong. And it kind of spiraled into its own little issue. So I went through like small slump, big slump, bounce back, small slump. And I feel like I'm more recently on an upwards trend right now. I definitely felt like maybe 2 seasons ago, I was definitely in a pretty large slump.
I got to ask you about something, because I feel like that's actually a real problem that a lot of players go through, where you're like, okay, well, positionally I'm sound, but I need to learn these mechanics. So you learn the mechanics, and all of a sudden you just want to go for those. Like, okay, well, now that I know how to flip reset or ceiling shot, I'm gonna go for that. But then you end up being positionally terrible. How do you start to recognize that that's actually your fault? Like, what is there any advice that you would say to players out there that the ranked warriors that are just saying, well, it is my teammates' fault. I can do flip resets, which means I'm not the problem. How do you get that recognition to look inwards and say, well, maybe it is my problem?
I mean, a lot of ranked warriors aren't going to like this, but you need to take time outside of ranked and go watch a replay. You need to watch a game where you thought, oh, I was mechanically beasting, and I put 3 flip resets in and we still lost, or I got so many flip resets, but I didn't score them and then we got scored on. And you need to go back and watch, maybe a day later with a fresh mentality before you've played any Rocket League for the day. Just watch yourself play the game and go, oh, I'm kind of playing all over the place, and I should just slow down for a second. And yeah, that was a good chance for a flip reset, but if I innovate on that flip reset just a little bit, fake it, or go for it a little bit later, then I have a much better shot at scoring that. And you just have to reflect on your mechanics and go back to basics once you've kind of elevated those mechanics.
Yeah, I'm gonna back it up. I always thought that I was one of those guys who kind of tunnel vision. I'm like, well, I can do this. We should be winning. And it wasn't until I sat down, I took the time, I did training packs, I went into free play, I sat down, I looked at replays. I even swallowed the ego and got other players to look at my replay, whether they were higher ranked or low ranked, just someone to look at it to say, hey, what do you see here? And even though you get mad because it's like, well, it's obvious that I did that. Don't tell me that. It's still good to hear that. And I think it is important. You're right. It's a step that a lot of people aren't willing to take, but it's a very crucial step. Now, I talked about before, we're left in a bit of an aftermath of the roster window here. So we have to talk about this because obviously big changes have happened for you, Mr. Kronovi. You have been, again, in the RLCS for forever. Since the beginning, you're one of the vets that are continuing to up their game and stay at the top here. But obviously, now you're not on Rogue anymore, which means you're not on a team, and you've mentioned that you are taking the split off to look at yourself. I have to be real. I think we all kind of saw something coming here. We've seen the rumblings of a change happening with Rogue in the past. So I'm just kind of curious what it's like to be in that spot, I guess, where you know something's about to change. You don't know exactly how it's going to change and how you keep playing through that. Because I feel like that is a big mental hurdle to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, after everything that had happened earlier in the year, my goal was kind of just to squash the personality differences and just focus on competition. We were going to play with each other, guaranteed the whole split once we signed with Turin. So it was much easier to be motivated and looking forward at winning than it is to get distracted by, something else. It doesn't need to like drag us down. So it was mainly just keeping everybody, including myself, just full steam ahead and focused on the next event. Just practice for the next event and kind of just ignore what happened. Literally just gloss over it and move on. And just focus on winning, because at the end of the day, that's the one thing all three of us on the team can agree on, right? But it doesn't matter how we win, we just want to win. So we can channel that into a team atmosphere that most of the time was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I feel though that could be draining. And again, no digs at anyone else. Sometimes just teams just don't synergize when it comes. We've seen it across so many teams before. We're just in the back that chemistry isn't necessarily there, even though, again, the common goal is to win. But I feel like that can be draining. And I always like to ask you, someone that's been through it, for advice, again, to other players. I've seen it with CRL teams. I've seen it with other smaller teams that are trying to go big, go pro, where they end up in a work environment that isn't necessarily the best for them. But things kind of work and click on the field. But the rest of that, comms and outside that, tend to have to be problematic. How do you make sure that you are making the right decision to stay with a team like that, or at what point it is a good time to leave because it's too draining?
I think if you're going to be in esports and really push beyond the bubble and become one of the best players in the world, you need to be able to survive how draining it is. It's just kind of a prerequisite to break through that wall. But I think it's very important to be vocal about what you think is important, and be vocal about, hey, I think we're good in the field, but we could be better if our practice was more positive, if our comms were more energetic. And if you feel like you don't have energy that day, just like say it, and let's be teammates for each other and help each other out, instead of like holding animosity because someone just seems a little down and it's nobody's fault. They're just feeling down that day. And if your teammates can't improve despite you being vocal about it, again, in a more constructive way, you don't want to be toxic about it, then that's kind of a red flag, and it's a sign where maybe you should look to more like-minded people, for the next season or whatever.
Now, on that topic still, I kind of want to dive a bit more and look at the role of coaches and managers. Do you feel like that's actually an important role? You said it's important to vocalize, which I agree with. It is very important to communicate everything you're feeling and thinking to your teammates. But do you feel like some people might find that that's awkward, or they don't want that animosity, and that a coach and manager can fill that role? Do you feel like that's an important thing for teams that maybe are in the bubble region that don't have that kind of mediator to have? Or do you think it is possible and important to just directly say those things to your teammates?
I think the role of a coach is largely that mediator position, like you're saying. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I would say 99% of players don't want to have direct, discussions with their teammates about difficult topics. Most people don't like that kind of confrontation, and it definitely has gotten in the way of practices with teams before. So the coach, his job is to keep everybody glued together and to allow everybody's voice to be heard without anybody feeling like the finger is being pointed at them all the time. And so the better the coach, the better they are gluing the team environment together. And also there's a bit of natural synergy there. Some players already have like a good team chemistry with each other, and a coach might not need to do a whole lot to avoid animosity. He kind of just has to not be toxic himself, and it's fine.
You know, I got a business idea for you and me, because I feel like you mentioned something important there too. Is a lot of people just don't like conflict. You and me, we're gonna start a conflict management and training course. So all these players can just come to us. We'll teach them how to deal with that conflict, and they can just work through all the problems, and it'll be a nice, happy place. How about that?
That'd be great. You know, my greatest advice, some people are like, man, I'm really struggling in ranked, and all these people, like, you know, they're also confrontational in the chat. I'm like, just mute them. You know, it's probably that's our first tip. You get it for free right now, but you know, someone's causing problems, just mute them.
I like,
you know, just tune them out.
That's as you said, that's your free little tip. Get you hooked on our course. The program starts this winter. Join. I'm too lazy to do all that extra stuff. Figure it out. Mute them. That's all you need.
Yeah, we need a coach to work through our confrontations, because neither of us want to do the business.
We need a motivation management course. Someone get on that so we can start our course. It's a whole.
We're hiring.
It's a whole circle of courses that we all support. Look at that. We're all supporting each other in our own ways. Let's talk about this off season though. Obviously for you off season, Rocket League is not stopping. Rocket League is continuing to go hard with the new winter split coming up. Obviously it's a little bit of a different format here, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm more interested in your decision to not join a team. You did briefly mention it, I think on socials before, and your twit longer as well. But let's see if you can just elaborate again here. Why did you choose to take this off rather than finding a team to continue to try to play with this split?
So that question kind of has a two-part answer. So the first one is there's the timing. I left pretty late. I waited till after the major to say anything, and then the announcement took about a week. So by then there weren't many options left for me before the roster lock would end. So teams, I think I only wanted to ask 3 teams, and I only got to ask 2 of them before anything happened. And then they said one of them said they had already found their person, and they were probably in the middle of contract stuff with said person. And then the other one said, "Oh yeah, like we'd be interested. We'll look into it." And then like their tryouts just kind of continued, and they probably did one tryout the next day, and then we're like, no, like this is fine, this is good, and they didn't want to do more tryouts or whatever. So my options were very limited. I did look, but I was honestly a bit like picky with what I wanted.
You've earned the right to be picky.
So I thought, hey, well, I could sign up for their LCS with 2 other people that didn't find a team, but how good would we be? I would basically just be treading water. I mean, there's a chance we like do really well, but I'm not like desperately trying to prove like, hey guys, don't forget about me. Like I know people, and my fans especially, know that I can still compete at an RLCS level. I just didn't want to, you know, maybe sign into a contract that I didn't want to rush anything.
Fair.
I wanted to actually plan this out and do most of the stuff on my own terms and just kind of challenge myself a little bit. So going this whole season as a free agent is going to be a bit sobering, you know, this is the first time I've had to sit on the sidelines and watch other people play the game that I love to play. It's been 10 seasons in a row. I've never done this.
Yeah.
So it's a bit weird, but it's going to be the motivation I need. It's going to be the kick in the butt I need to say, hey, if you want to go back and play on those teams, like they're going to have to want you. And how do I make them, you know, want to sign me? I need to be playing really good.
Yeah, honestly, this is why I tell people, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you right now. I say this at other times too, is you, in my eyes, have been one of the most level-headed, one of the most straightforward person. You're hardworking. You know what needs to be done to get the job, and you make sure that you're working on yourself first to always better yourself. And this kind of goes to prove that too, that you're saying, you know what, a split isn't going to matter. I don't need to, as you said, have my name in the spotlight the whole time. I'll be able to prove myself, but I want to be able to work on that. And that's a really hard thing to do, I feel, for players, especially as you said, you just love playing the game. So to take a step away, that's a big step. So I got to commend you for that. It is honestly unprecedented. I don't think we've really ever seen someone actively say, I'm taking a bit of time off and coming back to it. So it's huge. Now I'm curious if you think, obviously there's another trade window that'll come up after the winter split, and you know, as far as we know, this will keep happening for seasons to come. Do you feel like it being so short, other players are going to be caught in a situation like you, where like, you know, options aren't the best, I'm taking a split off? Do you think we'll see this more with top players, where a split may come to be a bit of a break period for them?
I think it'll depend. We'll see it more if I pull this off. I'm really hoping that I can set a precedent with this. I would love to, in a year from now, look back and go, you remember that time I took like the biggest gamble anybody had ever taken, and it worked, and I proved you could. I would love to have that be the history, not remember when he said he would come back and he never did. Feels bad.
Yeah, no, that's true. You're right. It is a bit, but the fact that you're doing this means you're confident in your ability to pull this back, and we've seen you do it before. You know, you said you had a couple plateaus and you pulled back from those, and I don't think very many people, and if they do, they're wrong, can argue that you're not deserving to be at that top level. Like you're continually proving that you have a place in top level play. So I'm interested to see it too, and I'm rooting for you as well, because I think this will be good just for probably the mentality of a lot of players that feel like they can't get a break like that. So a very important pivotal moment, I think, you're right, in the longer scheme of Rocket League esports. Let's talk about this offseason though. Let's talk about what it looks like for you. I'm just gonna ask the question, what does it look like for you?
It's probably just gonna be a lot of ranked and streaming. Those are the two things that I know I could put tons of hours in without realizing I'm putting so many hours in. I don't want to burn out necessarily. I want to keep a very long and consistent. Like I would rather, instead of play 8 hours a day 5 days a week, I'd rather play 4 hours a day 7 days a week. I would want to keep it very consistent, and if I start not enjoying, like if I start getting really angry at ranked, it's time to just put it away for a minute and come back. Regain a proper, healthy, positive mentality for Rocket League, and regrow and find that passion I had in 2015, 2016, when I just was in love with the game itself, and I was basically purely just focused on what I could do in the game. I wasn't focused on what other people were doing, what my teammates were doing. It was like, what am I doing with like the ball? Like I have the ball, what am I doing with it? And just enjoying that aspect. That was when I felt the most like focused on Rocket League, was when I was more selfish with my own time with Rocket League. So I'm trying to get back to that.
Now, do we feel like there's a possibility? I just, you know, with your inside knowledge of looking at the landscape of behind the scenes Rocket League, scrims, all this kind of stuff, do you feel like there's a possibility for you to have that opportunity to say, hey guys, I got a night off here, can we play together, kind of situation, to already try to scope yourself out for that next split looking ahead? That way you're not stuck to just dealing with whatever's open during that small trade window.
Oh yeah, I'll probably take any opportunity available to play with teams that maybe, you know, one of their players can't make it. Like I don't want to be a sub. I don't want to be known as a substitute for this split. I would rather be known as like a stand-in, right? Like other games will call a stand-in, and play a tournament or play an event. And just I like competition so much, and I'll be gated from most of it just because I'm not on a team right now, that I'll be jumping at any opportunity for even a higher level comp than 6-man, because that's about as high as I'll be allowed to go if there's nothing going on.
You know, I just got this idea. I kind of want to, like, you know, those old, like, way back in the day, you've probably seen memes of them, the dating things where people would send in their VHS, like, tell me about yourself, and they try to sell themselves on the
I think
yeah, I kind of want to see that for players like in your situation. Like, this is why you should pick me. If Kronovi, if you had to make a 10-second, 15-second video right now, how do you sell yourself to players? I'm a hard worker. Like, what would you say?
Like, I have a strong work ethic. You know, I'm always gonna be there on comms. I know how to rotate. And you know, I prefer to, you know, just fill the gap. So if you need me on the defensive third, you know, I've got the team. If you need me to ball chase, I've got it under control. You know, I'm flexible, and you want me on your team.
This is, you know what? I really hope someone can grab that and make it into that style. That's brilliant. Selling yourself. So, you know, just, I guess, looking at, just to kind of cap things off, and then I'll let you go here. For this next little bit, do you foresee any obstacles? Obviously, you mentioned you might get frustrated at ranked, but beyond that, can you foresee any obstacles now coming through the winter split into that spring split that you can preemptively jump on and try to get ahead of before that happens?
I think the only obstacle, there's two. I think one of the big obstacles is just myself, my own mentality. Just don't get in my own head. Stay motivated. The other obstacle, I think, is going to be how people play the RLCS point scheme, and will teams even make moves during this second split? Because teams are going to start realizing, hey, we're going to go to Worlds, probably. Or, hey, we're really probably definitely going to make Worlds, mathematically speaking, and we're not going to change our roster because we're just going to be basically kicking a guy off for someone else to go to Worlds with. And I think that, that'd be really bad for the player that got kicked to know, hey, I'm on a Worlds team. Oh, no, I'm not.
Yeah, true.
I'm on no team. And then the player they'd have to pick up would have massive shoes to fill and would have to be really good, because then they would be going to Worlds as like a random pick almost. So the teams that would be available after second split roster lock would be like teams that know they can't make it to Worlds, or teams that are like, they need that little edge, that last burst to like squeak into the last spot of Worlds.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'm hoping for, is a team that has some points but kind of messed up a little bit in split 2 and has a shot in split 3 to go to Worlds, but it's like kind of slim. They need to win it all. And I would love to like come back on that as they like ride the underdog story all the way to the top. That would be crazy.
And then they see that profile you just made for yourself there, and like, all right, you know what? We need a couple points. Kronovi's the guy that we want to bring on the team.
It's all banking on the VHS tape.
It's all the VHS tape. That's brilliant. Kronovi, man, I'd love to chat a lot longer with you, man. It's been a while. Hopefully get some more chats in the future. But I wish you best of luck during this off-season, the Kronovi off-season, and then heading obviously into that spring split there. I'll be sure to tune into streams. I'm sure you'll be doing that. But thank you so much for joining me, and good luck going forward.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.